Let's get started talking about the science of progressive overload. So, we all know to an extent what progressive overload is, but we don't really execute it that well. And our clients don't really execute it that well. So, the better our clients execute progressive overload, the better their results will be. And that is true in any element of fitness. So, it's a practice of gradually increasing the stress placed on the body during training to continually improve performance, build strength, increase muscle size. It is one of, and probably the most important fundamental principle of effective training. What happens is you push your body beyond its current capacity in a controlled manner, and it allows it to grow stronger. So what we're going to go through is a number of ways of applying progressive overload to your clients. And as long as your program applies these principles, it will be an effective program. It can always be made better, but if your program applies progressive overload, then you're winning. Okay, so there's multiple types. Let's go over when we can do it. Increasing weight is the first one. Okay, it's increasing the weight lifted in exercises place more demand on the muscles. When do you apply it? When the weight feels manageable. Your clients need to be told to lift more weight over a period of time. It is the most unavoidable form of progressive overload. The only type of exercise that wouldn't have more weight would be calisthenics, but that would be changed in terms of improving complexity, and same with plyometrics. So our clients need to be told to lift more weight quite often than not. If a client asks what weight to lift, and that's a question I get all the time, which I can never answer for online coaching because I don't know how strong that is. Pick a weight, and if you can easily hit the rep target, then you need to increase it until you get to a point where it's a struggle to hit the rep target. Okay, so for strength and hypertrophy, there's a couple of models of progression there. We're going to go over single, double, and triple progression models, but generally once the client can complete a set number of reps at a given weight, increase the load by a small variable to keep challenging the muscles. Now, this is something that people don't do on a few exercises. They won't do it on leg presses, and they won't do it on deadlifts, and generally back squats. People think they always need to improve by the large plates. Your body doesn't know anything in terms of how much weight you're lifting. It knows how much tension you're experiencing. So if you progressively overload with smaller plates, what will happen is a lot of time for an exercise like a leg press or whatever, you probably won't notice too much of a difference, but you'll be lifting significantly more weight over the course of a set. If we do 3 sets of 20 with a 5 kilo excess, we go 20 by 5, that's 100 kilos. That's going to be 300 kilos extra load done over the course of that workout. So a very small amount on the bar can lead to a pretty massive improvement in stuff across that. Okay, it's really good for low rep, high weight sets and for hypertrophy training as well. For endurance, we're not going to worry about too much. Now, next one's increasing reps. Okay, which is increasing number of repetitions performed while maintaining the same weight. So the client can complete their current rep range, add a few extra sets. I generally use this one a lot, and I recommend that people use rep ranges in their training, and when someone can hit the high end of the rep range, they increase their weight, which is a double progressive overload methodology. Okay, so we're going to go over that in a future module. Increasing repetitions will push more towards muscular endurance. It will still have good hypertrophy benefits and stuff like that. It just depends on where you hit failure. Now, increasing sets, adding more sets to increase overall volume. Okay, generally, you're doing that when you're trying to challenge someone's capacity and if they have time to train. So there is mixed evidence at the moment showing that volume is the key to hypertrophy. And we're seeing a lot of people now shift more towards a lower volume type approach. You still can't say that volume doesn't work. Okay, it's for some people it does, some people it doesn't. Some people thrive with extra volume, some people thrive with lower volume. So that's part of the experimentation. What I would do is I would also use a client's preference. So if someone wants to lift heavy, lower volume, increase weight. If someone wants to lift the same way or they're worried about certain things, increasing sets is a good thing to do that. Okay. Next one is decreasing rest periods. This will increase training density, improve work capacity. You can use this if clients are time pushed, for example. If you want to use it for metabolic conditioning or circuit work. It's a good way to apply progressive overload. It's also really fantastic for using in a semi-private training model. So doing like a 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off interval, then 35-25, 40-20, 45-15 is a really good 4-week structure for someone to go through. Now, improving form is also a form of progressive overload. Increasing the range of motion of the exercise, for example, slowing down the exercise, putting pauses at a certain point to overload the muscle and overload that position. These are all very valid ways of having progressive overload. So if I'm coaching someone, or even when I'm coaching myself, I generally look at applying multiple effort forms of progressive overload. So ideally, I'm going to increase the weight. So let's say I'm doing a hack squat, just for argument's sake, and I've got 60 kilos on the hack, on the sled. Cool. First time doing the hack squat, I'm going to go full range of motion, kind of bounce out the bottom a little bit, still hit my reps, like 3 sets of 8. Let's just say I'm going for 3 sets of 6, 3 sets of 16. I do 3 sets of 8 because I'm trying to leave 1 or 2 reps in the bank each time. All right, cool. So next workout, what I'm going to do is I'm going to improve the exercise form. I'm going to try and do the same thing in terms of load, but what I'm going to do is have a more controlled eccentric, a pause in the bottom position, but not touching, to take the stretch reflex out of the muscle, then push up. And really try and maximize the amount of work and tension I can create from the same weight. So therefore, improving muscular stimulus by improving my form. And then what I'll do there is when I've locked that in, I'll increase the weight. Now that will eventually get to a point again where I can't increase the weight again without losing form. Because when you are lifting maximally, your form will go downhill slightly. And there's nothing wrong with that. It is, in fact, it needs to happen, because if you're hitting your maximum is not going to be pretty. Okay. But then after a period of time, you can focus on increasing exercise form, then move back to increasing load, then increasing repetition. So moving through the rep range, improving your form, etc., etc. So it can be a very useful thing, and increasing time and attention is part of that. Okay. So looking at, that slower lowering phase. Now, a lot of the time, an increased eccentric contraction isn't necessarily necessary for more muscle growth, but it allows you to standardize what the client is doing. So you don't need to be crazy with 4 seconds and having a stopwatch every single rep, like the pitcher, but make sure that you standardize the speed at which someone moves at, and they're maintaining control on the muscle, because that means that you are going to progressively overload with good form. Okay. So it's always a controlled eccentric in some way. Now, adding new exercises, that is a useful way to also apply some progressive overload. And I generally like to use that in terms of, adding complexity to the exercise or range of motion. From there, we can manipulate tempo, which we talked about, using pauses and stuff like that, focusing on manipulating certain phases. So if I want to build up someone's bench press strength, what I might do is get them to go down with the control, but put a 2-second pause in the bottom of the exercise. And what they'll do is they'll take the stretch reflex out and they'll get them to overload the pecs. Again, it's part of improving form. You may manipulate tempo more often than not in a situation of limited equipment. Okay, so if you're training clients at home and all they've got is like a limited selection of dumbbells and weights, you will manipulate tempo to make it harder for that person. So if I have someone with limited, they have a couple of dumbbells and maybe a Swiss ball at home and they want to build their legs up, it's going to be hard to do that because they don't have, a leg press and a hack squat and thousands of kilos of plates. So what we might do is a 6-second eccentric Bulgarian squat with a 4-second concentric, really, manipulate that tempo to put as much tension in the muscle. And when they've done both sides of that, move them into a Swiss ball leg call with, say, a descending isometric hold at the top. So 12-second isometric at the top, next rep 10-second isometric, 8, 6, 4, 2. You get the idea. And that way, manipulating tempo can give them a really good training effect without really having to worry about anything else. You give them a good training effect, they've got limited equipment, and then it's in. Increasing ROM is another one. So moving from, say, a split squat to a front foot elevated split squat to a rear foot elevated split squat to a back foot or Bulgarian split squat, pardon me. These are really, really good for clients who, again, have limited equipment. And then advanced techniques like drop sets, eccentric, cheat reps, high volume, all that kind of stuff. They all, have benefits. I generally like to place them in more advanced client periodization, which I call myocyte maturation, which we're not going to talk about today. But we don't need to worry about that too much. Right now, they're very useful for people when they're training at home. Okay, these can be very, very useful, and supersets are very good when someone's time poor. So when do we apply it? When plateaus occur, when progress becomes too easy, when recovery is optimal, as clients adapt. So we apply it pretty much every single workout. Now, I wanted to go over methods of progressive overload that aren't normally used because most things that are taught are done for clients in fully equipped gyms. And training logistics trumped optimality 10 times out of 10 because a lot of our clients won't be training in an optimal environment. Our job And the best way to become a skilled coach is to be able to apply progressive overload in any circumstances at any time with limited equipment to get our clients our result. We can be realistic with our clients and say you're probably not going to build as big a legs with your limited selection of dumbbells, kettlebells, and a Swiss ball, but we can certainly put some size and strength in them. So a good coach can apply multiple forms of progressive overload and not just get stuck into one.